Endzone 2 is plodding along healthily in early access, and I figured I'd have a dive in and see how it's doing. Partly because I fancied a bit of post-apocalyptic city building, partly because the original holds a special place with me and I want to see its sequel do well. Despite the name, Endzone 2 charts a very different course to its predecessor. The setting is still there, that struggle to survive in a world of ramshackle huts and hut-dissolving acid rain is all present. But here, the devs have moved away from the Banished-esque balancing act between needs and logistics, instead leaning more into Anno roots. The majority of the world is an uninhabitable marshy mess. The only thing you can build on are these plateaus. Each has different resources available, meaning if you want to progress, you're gonna have to have a few satellite towns funneling resources back to a main hub. See? Anno vibes through and through. Initially, the balance for survival doesn't take much. You'll need food and water. Wood is plentiful in forests, and scrap can be scavenged from ruins on each plateau. Your most important resource, however, are your settlers. Keep them happy and fed and provide a roof over their heads, and your population will grow, meaning more workforce, more materials, and more expansion. Born into this world just to shovel clay, that's their lot. As you advance, you'll unlock more advanced building materials to use on bigger and better things, as well as new resources to stave off the game's increasing threats. Clothing to shield your townsfolk from acid rain, and medicine to stave off radiation sickness. So you are always expanding, growing your population, meeting the needs of said larger population so you can stabilize, and then expand again. That is the loop. But you aren't confined to your plateau. After taking your survivors to their new home, your trusty apocalyptic battle bus will tear through the wasteland looting buildings. In some, you'll find scraps to take home, but others have a bit more to them. Your survivors can rummage around in the rubble looking for tidbits and treasures, and everything they find adds to your research dial. Fill it up, and you'll gain a point to spend on unlocking a part of the tech tree. This is a really novel approach to research, and while I'm sure these events will wear thin down the line, it's fun to see exploration tied so closely to advancement. It keeps that setting always on your mind. You're reminded time and again that you are survivors in a wasteland, and it builds the atmosphere beyond just a top-level coat of paint. Digging through these ruins is the key to making a life for your people, and you'll unlock upgrades, resources, buildings, and mechanics as you go. There's a bit of a dash to unlock some elements that will be crucial for keeping you alive, like medicine, but most of the stuff is there to ensure that you can keep a growing population happy and provided for. The resources around you will only take you so far, and sooner or later you will have to send out a batch of survivors and claim a new plateau. The world is divided into segments, which get opened up as you rebuild bridges, with different segments housing more advanced resources. For instance, iron is crucial to progressing but not native to your starting region, so you'll have to expand out, cross the river, settle a town, and ferry that lovely iron back to your main hub. And that's the real logistical challenge of the game. You can't make every town self-sufficient, and even if you could, it doesn't make sense to. You want to have a network between them providing and supplying, redistributing in the most logical way. This requires vehicles, and you're initially hamstrung by having only the one bus, but you can unlock more later to turn your survivors' enclave into a little trading empire. Though, while it's easy to get carried away feeling like the last capitalist on Earth, growth is there for a reason. To scale up and deal with the ramping dangers of the world, because life in Endzone is hostile, to say the least. The biggest threat to your people is periodic droughts. All that water you need to survive, that'll disappear for a while, and you'll have to make do with what you have stored. Plants will shrivel, lakes will dry up. If you haven't been preparing ahead, a drought can decimate your town. Not just depleting your stocks, a thirsty worker is an inefficient one, and then they're a dead one. If things get too dire, bodies will litter your streets, and if you can't get rid of them, this will spread sickness and disease, which is really the last thing you want mid-drought. Other than radiation poisoning, which is another thing to watch out for. Oh, and acid rain. It's a real ironic twist when that comes after a drought, isn't it? The point is, there's a lot of threats in Endzone 2, and these will get more severe as the game progresses. You aren't growing for the sake of it, but reaching milestones to be able to survive the mounting perils. And that's an aspect of city builders I do like. I personally love feeling like disaster is around every corner, but if that's not your cup of tea, that aspect of the game can be downplayed and decreased to your liking. It is a fun game. It's surprisingly polished despite its early access state, and it has some really atmospheric sound design. The game loop is familiar for a reason, and it will keep you flitting between one job and another, making small steps and ever progressing. I like the loop, But then again, I do like Anno, and while the game is taking shape, there is something I feel is missing. Something pretty crucial, and it's really all in the name. If you never played the original Endzone, it is similar at face value. Band of grubby survivors, world gone to hell, a desperate push to keep going. But beneath that, the original was a harsh logistical challenge. A balancing act that could sweep the leg and leave you on a downward spiral if you play it too fast and loose. Where you placed your buildings really mattered. The routes workers took, where they lived, where they got their food and water from, it was all important. And all that depth and fine-tuning just feels missing from its sequel. I felt like I could slap things down, and as long as resources were going up, there wasn't really much to worry about. Maybe this more relaxed style is just the direction the devs want to go in, and it's their game after all, they can do what they want with it. Personally, I would love to see them bring in the logistics and problem solving from the first game. It felt like a real challenge, and it kept me coming back. This is more on the passive side, which, let's be honest, is what some people want. The game is still in early access, and it can go anywhere from here. I would like to see the game pulled in a bit more and channel more of its predecessor's energy, but am I alone in that thinking? If you've played either game, let me hear your thoughts. What direction would you like to see this go in? If this is the first you're hearing of either game, let's hear from you too. Think you could guide your people through the end times and not doom them all? Get any thoughts, questions, and opinions written down below. But anyway, that is all from me for today. One final time. This has been Endzone 2, a post-apocalyptic city builder that strays away from its predecessor to chart a new direction.